Week 2 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 12 defense DST units I'm ranking. Number 1, the Baltimore Ravens. Last week, no doubt about it, Baltimore got the doors blown off, losing 41-40. Their defense couldn't make a stop at all at the Buffalo Bills. But this week, a great matchup versus the Cleveland Browns. With old friend Joe Flacco still going, starting quarterback here for this Cleveland Brown team. So if you get a hand on Flacco, he's going to go down. So I think Baltimore, after a bad loss last week, they come out there. Defense gets more focused. They get to Joe Flacco early and often in this game. I still think they'll give up some points because Flacco still slings that ball down the field, but a few turnovers and a few sacks. And I think they could be the best defense this week in fantasy. Number 2, Denver Broncos. Last week, a solid outing it was for Denver. When you got one of the best defenses in the league and a shutdown corner like Patrick Surtain, obviously it makes everything better. And this week, another decent matchup in Indianapolis. I know last week Indianapolis had an offense of extravaganza with Miami coming to town, but this Bronco defense, I think they're going to shut down Daniel Jones and this offense. And we've seen flashes from Daniel Jones. We'll have 1 or 2 big games here and there, but usually he don't do 2 in a row. So I think Denver gets pressure on Daniel Jones. His wide receivers aren't all that great. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs. I know they got the good tight end rookie Tyler Warren over there and Taylor in the backfield, but I think Denver goes into Indianapolis and they can hold them in the mid-teens, cause a few turnovers, and definitely get a few sacks. Number 3, Buffalo Bills. So the Buffalo Bills, they didn't play good deals. They didn't make stops as well in that game, giving up 40 points to Baltimore. But that's just one of those games where 2 great teams go at it, and it's early in the season, and they just go up and down the field and make plays all game long. But this week, first division rival, New York Jets, AFC East matchup. Usually those are dogfights and scrap it out type of ball games. And we've seen these 2 teams play a lot of close games, especially in MetLife Stadium over the last couple seasons. I think this Buffalo defense in this one, they're going to buckle down, make some plays. And we know Justin Fields at times holds on to the football too much, and that's where he gets in trouble in terms of football over and takes a big sack. Number 4, Los Angeles Rams. So last week, Los Angeles shut down the Houston Texans offense, holding Nico Collins to 3 catches, 25 yards, only holding them down as well to 3 field goals in that game. So this week at Tennessee, a great matchup. Rookie Cam Ward, last week it was a tough game for him in Denver, and they don't have a lot of options in offense. Besides Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley, there's not much going on and not consistency as well. Tennessee offense, I think Los Angeles, even if it's a tough road trip going pretty far to travel for this one, could go into Tennessee and play good defense in this one, especially versus the rookie quarterback, Cam Ward. Number 5, the San Francisco 49ers. So last week the defense played great. I thought it's Seattle. We know they've lost a lot of players over the last couple of years, but as long as you still got Nick Bosa and obviously Fred Warner over there for this San Francisco 49er team, they're going to go out there and make plays. And this week's a very good matchup in New Orleans. One of the worst offenses in all pro football. Spencer Rattler, he's a quarterback that he just throws the football up for grabs a lot of times, and he takes big hits, and he looks to run a little bit too much. So with all those factors, it plays into the hand of obviously a veteran defense like the San Francisco 49ers. I think Nick Bosa is going to feast in this game. He's going to get to Spencer Rattler a couple times in this one, and I think a couple turnovers we're going to see in mid-teens, low 20s. At most, we're going to see New Orleans score as well. Number 6, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So last week was a game where it was just 2 quarterbacks versus each other. Aaron Rodgers and Fields trying to get revenge on their former team. And Aaron Rodgers came out with the victory, throwing 4 touchdowns for his new team in the Steelers. So the defense, it was horrible, no doubt about it. Justin Fields and that Jet offense went up and down the field. Garrett Wilson torched the secondary. Breece Hall running to the left had a big game on the ground versus defense. But I think this week versus Seattle Seahawks, they go out there, is Pittsburgh in the home opener, and they get things right in this one. Like I said, they got a good defense led by TJ Watt. You got Hayward on the defensive line, Jalen Ramsey in the secondary. So a lot of good players on this defense and Pro Bowl type players. So this week, after a bad game defensively, and they still came out with the win last week, Pittsburgh, they get back to basics, and it's a good matchup versus Sam Darnold. I know Darnold had a big season last year, but I don't think he duplicates that this year. Number 7, the Arizona Cardinals. So the Cardinals last week took care of business, went into New Orleans, held them to 13 points, had a decent fantasy day. This week, a little bit of a tougher matchup. Carolina coming to town, even though they don't have a lot of options on offense. Chuba Hubbard to Torrey McMillan, the only 2 guys they should be focused in on is this Arizona defense. But like I said, Arizona defensively, they don't have a lot of big players as well on their defense. But this week, I think they're a solid top 10 option once again. With Bryce Young still a young quarterback, mistakes are going to be there at times, and taking some big hits as well for Bryce Young. So this week, Arizona, once again, I think could be a good option. Number 8, the Minnesota Vikings. So last week, the Vikings, they didn't do much the first 3 quarters at all in that game. And then fourth quarter, they buckled down in that one, had 2 sacks, had a fumble recovery, even though it was a desperation lateral 10 in the game. So they finished off with a decent ball game versus Chicago Bears. The pressure was there all game long in that one. It was for this Viking defense. But Caleb Williams, especially early in the game, escaped out of a lot of plays and ran the football. But this week, Michael Penix, I don't think he's going to escape as much as Caleb Williams did. We know Robert Flores, he's a very aggressive play calling defensive coordinator, a lot of blitz packages and schemes he brings. So this week versus the young quarterback in Penix, I think this Minnesota Viking defense goes out there and has a good performance. Number 9, the Indianapolis Colts. Indianapolis last week took care of business. That Miami offense didn't do anything in that one. Tua, he had to get rid of the football quick. I know their offensive line is banged up and not a good unit. And this week versus the Denver Broncos, I think they could cause some turnover on Bo Nix as well. Where last week we saw Bo Nix turn the football over 3 times versus Tennessee, even though that's uncharacteristic of Bo Nix as well. But Indianapolis, always a better home unit defensively than they've been on the road over the last 3-4 seasons. And I think once again this week versus the Broncos, they could go out there and be a decent option. Number 10, the Detroit Lions. So the Lions back home this week. Caleb Williams coming to town. And this is a Ben Johnson run offense, which obviously should give this Lion defense lines a little bit of advantage, where they versed that offense for 3 years straight in practice when Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. So Chicago, they didn't look good on Monday night. Caleb Williams, erratic, throwing the football all over the yard, incomplete passes, overthrowing targets, getting receivers hit hard. And this week, after coming off a bad loss, first division rival, the Green Bay Packers, I think this defense, they buckled down in this one. And Aiden Hutchinson goes out there and gets a couple sacks in this one on Caleb Williams. Number 11, the Los Angeles Chargers. I thought the Chargers did a decent job in that one in Brazil in the opener versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I know Mahomes, he had a pretty good ball game in that one. Matt Hollywood Brown had 10 for 99. But Los Angeles, they've always been a solid defensive unit for the most part. This week, a matchup, Monday Night Football at the Vegas Raiders. Brock Bowers possibly might not play in this game where he's banged up with an knee injury. And if you take Brock Bowers out of the offense, they're going to have a tough time, in my opinion, moving the football, even though without Ashton Ginty in the backfield this season, and Jacoby Myers is a pretty solid wideout. But I think Los Angeles in a division matchup, and Bowers possibly not playing, they're a solid top 12 option in the 12th and final DST ranking is the Houston Texans. This week, not a great matchup for Houston, but last week we saw him go out there and put in a good performance versus a good offense, only giving up 14 points to the Los Angeles Rams, where they had to deal with top receivers like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. So this week, another challenge, but they're home this time at least, where they got to verse Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka, 2 good receivers, especially Mike Evans, obviously 11 years in a row to start his career, 1,000 yards, and Egbuka, first career game with 2 touchdowns, and also Bucky Irvin in the backfield. But like I said, Houston, they got a good defense. They got a few Pro Bowlers on it. Anderson leading the pass rush. And I think this week here versus Tampa Bay in the home opener, this defense could go out there and make a few things happen. So that's the top 12 defense DST units I'm ranking for week 2 of the fantasy football season.